Diamond. I'm excited to talk to you today. This is a really cool thing, everybody. Just for a little background, how Fred and I know each other. We It started just a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
and we started commenting on each other's posts and liking each other's posts. And I shared a newsletter actually that was a very personal newsletter. It had a lot of my background story in it and my personal growth journey, really. And it really resonated with you, Fred, and it caused you to reach out to me, send me a DM to say, "Hey, love this. It was, inspiring. I had, somebody that I knew that went through something similar. Let's talk." And then boom, we kind of became friends after that. It was really neat. I just wanted to share that. Um, but thank you so much for being a connection of mine, Fred, and uh, we're connected on LinkedIn, but as we developed our relationship and started to know each other, we talked a lot about your book. So I would like to hit on that because there's a lot of really interesting pieces in your book that we talked about that I feel like people need to hear today. And the title of your book, your book is about Lyme disease, right?
Yes. Lyme disease awareness. Absolutely.
And that's a topic that honestly, I feel like we've all heard of Lyme disease, but I've never heard of it, described the way we talked about the symptoms and that sort of thing. So I think it's really important to spread the awareness today. But there's hope for Lyme disease too, and I think it's just important to understand what the symptoms are, but we've talked about it a lot. I want to again spread the awareness here on this platform today. Can you talk a little bit about your book and help us understand more about the disease?
Absolutely. And Tara, thank you so much for having me here. It was good to see my good friend Stu Heinecke on your introductory video. He's been a guest on my podcast, and I
Oh,
love
he's
his new
great.
book. Yeah, it's about weeds as
Love it.
well. Very, 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 very talented guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I run an organization called the Institute for Excellence in Sales, and most people know me from that world, right? I blog or I LinkedIn post, and I run programs and events on sales, but not many people knew this other side of my life, which was very, very important. And that's one of the great things about LinkedIn is over the last 2.5 years, particularly over the last 2.5 years, people have used the opportunity to get more authentic, to be more vulnerable about what was going on in their life. So, for I don't know, 11 years, I've been on LinkedIn almost from day one. I would promote our events. I would talk about sales topics. I would always promote the members of the Institute. I started doing a podcast called the Sales Game Changers podcast. I've done over 550 shows. I wrote 2 books in the last year. One was called Insights for Sales Game Changers, where we talked about some of the highlights and lessons from the show. But about a year and a half ago, actually less than that, about a year and a quarter ago, someone very close to me who has what's called chronic Lyme disease,
Mhm.
um, began to struggle with it, let's just say. And I decided that I needed to know more about this disease. This is someone I was with for a long time, and I thought I knew everything I needed to know. When I started delving deep into it, Tara, I realized I didn't know. I knew 5% of what I needed to know. And I bought every book on Lyme disease. I went up to Amazon, and there were 3 types of books. There were thick books written by doctors, the medical history of the tick and the history of the disease and all those things. Then there were like a little bit thinner books on first person stories, my battle with Lyme disease, how I overcame Lyme disease. Lyme disease, to put it in context, it's a tick-borne illness.
Yep.
So it comes from a tick. Usually a tick will be on a mammal, like usually a deer. The average deer has close to 3,000 ticks on it at any given time. So the tick will emerge from the animal. Maybe it's a mouse, maybe it's a deer. Usually it's the deer, but sometimes it's mice. And it will move on to a human if it gets close enough. And for some people, the bacteria that the tick carries will change your life. If you feel you were bitten by a tick, you don't even feel it; they're so small. But if you have nausea or exhaustion or pain, whatever it might be, and you go to a doctor who knows about Lyme disease, yeah, you might get onto to antibiotics and be okay. It's going to be a painful couple of weeks. The bigger problem is there's millions of people, Tara, around the world who weren't diagnosed the right way, right? And they've been to 10, 15 doctors over the years, and doctors dismiss them. You don't have Lyme disease, or you have chronic fatigue syndrome, or fibromyalgia, or even worse, Tara, it's in your head. You don't have
Wow.
the tests don't show anything. So I wrote a blog article last year for an organization called LymeDisease.org, and it was all these things that I just started learning about mold. And a lot of people with Lyme, they have gluten-free diets because gluten will block the killing of the bacteria that's in your body. And I wrote this blog post for LymeDisease.org. All of a sudden, hundreds of people started reaching out to me on Facebook. Um, no one's ever written an article from the spouse perspective, right, or from the family member perspective. It's a world that's it's dark. Sometimes you can't work. Sometimes you can't leave your bed. And then more and more people started responding. I then started doing some episodes of my Cells Game Changers podcast on with people who have overcome chronic illness, and those started raising the attention as well. And eventually I said, you know what, I'm going to write a book. People reached out and said, no one's ever written a book. That blog post you did was amazing. And I posted Love, Hope, Lyme, what family members, partners, and friends who love a chronic Lyme survivor need to know. And it was published August 17th.
Wow. Well, congratulations on your book, first off. That's
Thanks.
always an amazing accomplishment. But the side effects of Lyme disease, honestly, again, it blew my mind when we started talking about it. Um, you just don't think that it could have that much of an impact on somebody for like lifelong potentially.
Well, the thing is, it's Lyme is known as the great imitator. Because you may have, so what it is, again, it's the bacteria. The form factor of the bacteria, it's called a spirochete. It's similar to syphilis. Looks kind of like a corkscrew, sort of. So it's very nefarious. It digs into your organs, digs into every organ. So, for example, it'll dig into your joints, right? So it'll look like there's someone who's a Lyme survivor. Hey, David. It'll look like, I'm glad to see you here. It'll look like arthritis because your joints are aching. You can't move. You can't stand, whatever it might be. So a doctor will say, oh, you got arthritis. So here's the treatment for arthritis. Stephen Buhner's book. Thank you, David. I actually read his book. Stephen Buhner is a guy who was one of the first discoverers that herbs, when you get Lyme right away. And do you mind if we interact as people connect?
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So there's basically there's two general treatments. There's antibiotics, and then there's herbals, and there's people are searching. There's people use machines that emit radio frequencies to alleviate the pain, and people sit in infrared saunas. So there's but back to the original thing, it represents itself in so many different ways. And here's the other little side to it. The tick just doesn't transmit Lyme disease. It also transmits possibly as many as 40 other what they call co-infections, Bartonella, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and each of them have different results as well. I didn't know that. I thought this particular person in my life had Lyme disease. Now I know that there's many more co-infections that come along with it, and in some cases they're worse than the other.
So yesterday was Mental Health Awareness Day, right? So it was
Yes.
World Mental Health Awareness Day, and I knew today was coming up our talk on Lyme disease. And one of the posts that you did a couple weeks ago, again, it blew my mind because I never knew this was a correlation. It was a young lady. She was 22 in, was it Quebec?
Yes.
Quebec, is that where she was? In
Yep,
Canada?
she was.
Okay. And beautiful girl, 22 years old, life ahead of her, and she killed herself. She committed suicide,
Yeah.
and she had Lyme disease. Isn't that correct?
She did, and actually, one of the big challenges with the disease is it's 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 not. People might know of Lyme disease, they might have heard it, but people don't rally around the person with Lyme disease because it doesn't show up. Everyone is going to rally around the kid at the end of the street who has leukemia or something, and they'll have fundraisers and lemonade stands and all those things, and God bless them, and that's a tragedy for anybody to go through that as well. Lyme is you're bedridden for most cases. You're in pain. You don't, I look at somebody and say, oh, they must have Lyme disease the way another disease may happen. And the other thing too, one of our listeners just said his treatment was a combination of biofilm busters, herbs, and antibiotics. Every body is different. The Lyme bacteria may not affect people. I had someone on my podcast who's a successful sales professional. She never had any of the neurologic symptoms, which means when the bacteria gets into the brain and causes a whole slew of other things as well. So this particular post that you're referring to, a guy was a CEO of a company up in Quebec, and he posted that his daughter, his 22-year-old beautiful daughter, killed herself. That was the best she could do to treat the Lyme disease. It got so overwhelming for her. There's another good friend I have named Jody Hudson who wrote a beautiful book called My Promise to Alex, which is about her daughter, about the same age, who actually died of Lyme disease. Basically, her cells deteriorated, and it was definitely attributable to the Lyme. But the good thing about the post that you're referring to was it got a lot of attention. Yeah. And a lot of people in the Lyme world, I'll see, we want a celebrity to stand behind it. So you'll see Justin Bieber might have Lyme disease, or people are saying Michael J. Fox, he's known for, of course, Parkinson's, but maybe Lyme was the starting point for that. No one really knows, but they're all looking for ways to rally to get more attention. I'm the first civilian, who's written a book. I don't have Lyme disease, thank God. And, but the book that I've written it's taken off in the community because, the title Love, Hope, Lyme. Originally, Tara, I was going to call it Love, Loss, Lyme. But then I began to realize that even though it was more literative, most people lost a lot of things. Relationships, they can't work in a lot of cases. It's very hard to manage the disease. Daryl Hall, the rock star Daryl Hall, he has Lyme disease. He has to stop his shows at a certain point. Elena Delle Donne, she's a top women's basketball player with the Washington Mystics. She's been battling Lyme disease her whole career. She just announced that Nike just came out with a new shoe, a green shoe, focused on Lyme awareness. And that's getting some attention in the marketplace as well.
Well, that's great. And, like I've said to you before, I want to use my platform to spread awareness. And with yesterday being Mental Health Awareness Day, again, it just really stood out to me that this is a topic that we need to talk about because, again, I don't feel like enough people have awareness of the detrimental impacts that Lyme disease can have on your mental health, not just physical health. And that suicide is, you had a statistic, you dropped a statistic on me. Would you mind saying that one more time, Fred?
I forget which statistic you're referring to.
I think you said that the number one, what was it? The number one issue for mental health is it suicide?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's very hard to die of Lyme disease. What it does, it's going to give you a lifetime of misery in a lot of cases. And one of the reasons why I wrote the book, again, the subtitle is What Family Members, Partners, and Friends Who Love a Chronic Lyme Survivor Need to Know. I would go on these Facebook groups, and before I decided to research this, Tara, I didn't know. I mean, I was obviously on Facebook. I didn't know so many people who have Lyme were on Facebook. What I realized was they were basically crowd curing themselves because doctors wouldn't know, or sometimes doctors would dismiss them, or there's no real great test for Lyme disease, unlike COVID or whatever might be the case. So people are getting dismissed, and family members were dismissing them. There's another whole side of this where the concept of chronic Lyme disease isn't recognized by various government agencies. So, if you tell somebody I have chronic Lyme disease, In some cases, people will say that doesn't exist. I have a relative who has a friend who's an infectious disease doctor. And when she told this doctor the story, she said, well, we're not even sure chronic Lyme even exists. The CDC calls it post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome. So it's just a world of misery and horror. So yeah, imagine that if the best treatment is suicide. But here's something else I want to focus on. The reason that you and I connected was, I discovered you on LinkedIn, and you were getting a lot of engagement, and I reached out and you shared one of the posts, you shared your backstory. So here's like one of the great things about LinkedIn. People get it wrong. When people think it's about sales, it's about connecting with you and trying to sell something. That ain't what it's about. It's about building a relationship, connecting to the next level, getting on Zoom, whatever it might be, and discovering something.
Yeah.
Right. And discover. Now, you and I, we got there pretty quick because we come from a similar mindset, which is great. But I have people who I've been connected to for 10, 15 years where it's been a nice relationship. And then all of a sudden, someone will say, and this happened to me, someone reached out to me and said, I need a sales consultant to do something. And there's a guy I know just on LinkedIn. And I said, I think this guy might be the right guy. I reached out to him. He says, absolutely. I connected them. He just sent me an email this morning that they became a customer, right? So it's about understanding, taking the conversation to the next level. And then you find something, what you went through or the Lyme disease angle. I've had so many people who've reached out and said around the world, Tara, who have said, I had no idea what this disease was. I heard something, or my brother's wife's sister-in-law, I heard has this disease. Thank you so much for doing this little bit amount to educate us.
I love that. But you're right. It's LinkedIn, and this is something I preach. This is something I live by. So I have, my career before I was an entrepreneur, I was in outside sales. So I did that for many, many years. And I was a sales director, right? So outside sales, knocking on doors. So, what I have discovered is that, people on social media tend to not realize that there's another person at the end of that. And, when you're in outside sales, especially, you interact with that person, you're face to face. You know that that's a person, but you tend to forget that on social media and have this veil that you're just, again, selling to sell. But there's a strategy behind it, and it starts with acknowledgement of the fact that there needs to be a relationship there, just like there would be in an outside sales process. You have to have a relationship, or else somebody's not going to buy from you. And even if they do, it's going to be a transaction. So one of the best ways to create relationships long term on social media is sharing your story, is putting your messages out there and adding value. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. On my Sales Game Changers podcast, one of the shows I did before the pandemic, it was right before the pandemic kicked in. It was with the VP of sales from LinkedIn. Her name is Alyssa Merwin. And she talked about her success was because she was vulnerable. And she allowed herself to be vulnerable. This is like the one, she's either the number one or the number two top sales leader at LinkedIn in the United States. And, I did a big thing about the show, and it was a strong message. Well, pandemic kicks in. Everybody on the planet, Tara, is dealing with something. I remember I had a guest on my podcast in middle of 2020 who said the one thing about what we were all going through was that everybody in the world is dealing with the same three things. The lockdown-ish aspect of the pandemic and how that changed our lives, the health-related aspect of the pandemic, and then the third thing, whatever that might be. Maybe for you it's financial, maybe it's you're selling things to the sports arena world, and that went away. For the first time in our history, everyone's been dealing with something that's pretty significant, right? Yeah. So we're all looking for connection. We're all looking for, do I want to talk to you about my software? Sure. If I'm in sales, do I want you to become a customer? Absolutely. And in some cases, that's the conversation. It's like, let's get right to it, depending on who you're talking to and, what the disc profile is, whatever. But in a lot of cases, people want to, they want to know you more. They want to know a little bit more about what you're committed to. They'll scroll down on LinkedIn to where you volunteer, but they'll see your content. It's like, what are you posting about? And I decided every fourth or so post that I do, maybe every fifth, is going to be on something related to overcoming chronic illness or the Lyme disease. The post that I did about the beautiful young lady, who took her own life, and actually her father, he posted on LinkedIn. He was a CEO of his company, very successful man. Elaine Champagne is his name. And he posted, I very rarely post on LinkedIn. I want to let everybody know that I'm resigning my position as CEO of, I forget the name of the company, and here's why. And he had a beautiful picture of his daughter. And he explained something that those of us who are accessible to the Lyme world know about too much. And, I'm going to be taking a break. He must have gotten 8,000 comments and likes. And, the comments were on two sides. They were people in the Lyme world, but the vast majority were from people who were touched by suicide.
Yeah.
I also, not me, but quote, I lost my son when he was 20. Or, the number one cause of death with military is soldier suicide.
Yeah.
So people just started chiming in with that. And Elaine was very kind to respond to most people. But yeah, that was on LinkedIn. It wasn't Facebook. I mean, he might have also posted on Facebook. And it got such an amazing response that the government of Quebec is doing an investigation into the circumstances about treatment for the disease. Once again, we talked about this before. I mean, killing yourself over a disease, it's insane that this particular disease leads to that.
It is, but it's so important to spread the awareness of it, which is why I wanted to talk about this on my platform. But we need to spread the awareness of mental health and understand that it's not in our heads, right? Even if it is, it's important to talk about. It's important for people to know that they're not alone. And it could be something like Lyme disease. It could be something else. But the point of it is that it needs to be taken care of and addressed because everyone has a purpose and our lives mean something, right? Let's talk about it because honestly, the number one killer in the United States right now is suicide. So this couldn't be any more of an important topic. And what percentage of that is because of Lyme disease, I don't know. But it's a fair percentage, I would say. Any percentage is enough to talk about. It's the point of it is we have to spread awareness and for people to understand that they're not alone.
Now, that's a great point. And actually, one of the great things about LinkedIn, too, for the people who are to use it properly, is it's a great way to form the relationships.
Yes.
And real relationships. Not just, I'm going to touch base and, hey, do you need my product or, anything like that. I mean, yes, it does connect salespeople. It does connect business people. But, to be able to meet you and engage in a conversation like this across your network, your channel here, to talk about this. And hopefully if you're connecting to one person, I have a statement on my podcast. I would always say, if one person listens to my podcast, then one person listens to my podcast. I'd rather have 1,000, right? But if you're only going to get to one person, then get to that one person and then figure out some strategies on how you can get to more, because showing you care. What's one thing that's been amazing to me, and you can relate to this, is now I haven't really added a huge amount of LinkedIn connections because of the book, the Lyme disease book. I've added 1,000 Facebook friends, right? Because of the Lyme book, as I was alluding to before. And the response has been, thank you so much for spreading awareness, or thank you for being someone who's willing to show that you care for people. Because one of the other reasons why I wrote the book is I started looking at these Facebook pages. Relationships were terminating. Someone estimated that 75% of committed relationships, I don't mean friends, I mean, a spousal relationship or partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, ended because of the illness, the chronic illness. And then someone said to me, they believe it's 95% of those end usually because the spouse just can't take it anymore. The non-Lyme person. It's like, you're a different person. You're always in bed. You're always sick. I just can't take this anymore. And like I said, I noticed that in the market, and I said, I want to produce something that hopefully is going to bring some peace to the community, and hopefully is going to provide, some understanding of what people are going through. That's the one thing. I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Um, you're a great communicator, in a lot of different ways. Um, you know, it's very hard for people to communicate when they're coming from a position of, I hate to say weakness, but let's just say stress or trouble. And that's when you hear so much about the suicide. You hear, I had no idea,
Yeah.
right? Or they seemed okay. And then you live with the pain of knowing that I don't know what you could have done, but whatever.
Well, I'm actually connected with, he's an amazing psychologist on LinkedIn, and he'll be on my show next week.
Good.
But we've talked about, we've been very open about talking about depression and, suicide. And that's what our show is going to be about next week.
Good.
But one of the things he said to me is, it's a Robin Williams quote.
Mm.
People don't fake being depressed. They fake being okay. So for anybody that's listening to this right now and is suffering from depression or suicidal thoughts, I think that quote right there says it all. And of course, we all know what happened to Robin, right? He was beloved by so many people, and he ended up taking his own life. So, well, we could never know if that had something to do with Lyme disease or not.
Mm.
But the point of it is, there's a lot of people right now watching this that need to know that they're not alone, and there's no need to suffer in silence, and that there are people that care about you and want you to be here. And I'm one of those people. I don't have to know somebody to, to not want the best for them. I want the best for everyone. So if you are having these thoughts of suicide, my door is always open, and you can reach out to me at any time, and I could try my best to connect you to somebody that can help you professionally. And there's always, of course, the suicide hotline as well. But just know that you're not alone, and don't fake being okay
Mm.
anymore. If you need help, reach out, because the last thing that this world needs is one more life lost to suicide. Um, but on an end note, to cap this all off, I just want to say thank you so much again, Fred. Again, we met through commenting on each other's posts and engaging with each other's content.
Yep.
It started as that, and we both reciprocated on each other's posts without expectation of anything in return. From there, it turned into, we mutually had interest in each other's work and wanted to know more about what each other did. We shared our stories separately. And because of that, because of our openness and willingness to be vulnerable, as you said, Fred, it allowed each other to understand that we're real people, that, we want to work together in some kind of capacity, and we want to collaborate. And that's how you start a relationship. And it doesn't necessarily take a lot of time. And I know you have a background in sales. When I tell sales folks out there that to build a relationship first, and they say that's going to take too much time, I just laugh, because honestly, it's never happened quicker in my memory. A relationship, you can build a relationship here on LinkedIn, and before you know it, you call each other friend, and you may not have even ever met each other. It's never been like that, not quite.
Yeah.
So we're living in a new age where people are just really craving, like you said, with the pandemic, just human connection, human connectivity. And we want to know that there's somebody on the other end that maybe understands what we're going through or have gone through, or, will go through. So I just think it's important. Don't think that building relationships takes years. It doesn't. You start off as, adding value to someone else and being genuine, just being yourself and sharing. And that's the attraction mechanism that I talk about so frequently. It's there's push and pull with sales, but here you can pull. You can pull with having really good content that's valuable, that helps people. I'm not going to benefit monetarily at all by talking about Lyme disease. That's not the point. The point is to spread awareness because it helps someone else. And, you know, we all do that a little bit every day. All of a sudden, the world is a better place. It really doesn't take that much effort. So, any closing thoughts that you have, Fred?
No, that's a great point, and it's and use the platform. You know, it's interesting. I'm thinking about what connected me to or inspired me to reach out to you was it was a Friday night. I remember I pulled over, you know, for some reason, whatever. I was just coming back from dinner or something, and you know, just pulled into the parking lot and just kind of went through my phone, the usual stuff, and saw something you had posted on, and you had something like 100 comments and you know, like a whole bunch of likes, and you know, you pay attention to those types of engagements because something is going on, something in a good way is going on. And I saw your interaction. I'm like, whoa, this is pretty substantial. And you know, she knows how to use the platform. And you were commenting, as I like to do, whenever somebody commented on your post. I forget exactly what the particular post was about. And I said, this particular person, Tara Gooch, knows how to use LinkedIn. And then I reached out to you, and then we reached out. You gave the rest of the story, but use the system. I hate when I see people who repost a company's press release.
I
No one
know.
ever sees it
The
unless
worst.
you're, yeah. And I always, you know what, if I see a friend or a client or somebody who posts their company's press release, I'm always going to like it and comment. You know, I'll be the one person. They don't know how to use LinkedIn properly, but yeah, I mean, get to know it. There's a lot of things about it. There's so much value to it. Um, I have, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. Um, I have probably 50 close LinkedIn friends that are just as good as any human life, you
Yep.
know, friend from high school or college or whatever it might be, that I can reach out to, you know, within reason, almost 7 by 24. Um, you know, some are halfway around the world, and I know them more, and they know me more because they read my posts about Lyme disease, right? They
Yep.
know more than people I grew up with, even though I do a lot of posting on Facebook as well.
Yep.
But and I'm not shy about spreading this message because, and I appreciate you and your desire to get awareness about certain topics that need to be discussed. So thanks for having me here. This has been a pleasure, and I'm excited for you and for all your success.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Fred. And where can people find your book?
It's on Amazon. That's the primary way it's being sold. Love, Hope, Lyme. Go to my LinkedIn, Fred Diamond, and LinkedIn to me if you're watching this, and you'll see my LinkedIn banner. You know, has the picture of the two books. I have a green heart, which is kind of the symbol for Lyme disease, as part of my profile right up top. So yeah, there you go,
Perfect.
Fred
Yep,
Diamond,
I just
exactly.
grabbed your LinkedIn. So everybody, please connect with Fred Diamond. He is awesome. He is the real deal, and this guy cares a lot. So make sure you connect with him, support his content because he has very valuable content out there. And if you're looking for somebody to, if you're struggling with LinkedIn, if this is new to you, or if you're not experiencing the growth that you want, check out his posts. Look at what he's doing because he has really valuable original content that speaks to him, and you can hear his passion behind every post. And really, that's what starts a valuable content and really is the building block for relationships on LinkedIn are those original posts, but you can feel the passion behind it, right? You can tell that a robot's not writing it. This is a real human writing these posts, and they're valuable and they help people. So follow his stuff, follow him, support his content, buy his book. But I appreciate you, Fred. Thank you so much for being a valuable connection, and more to come. More to come. Who says this is the last show, right? we might need to do a series.
Tara, thank you so much. I appreciate it.